Jins is an Arabic word that is probably related to genus. Sometimes you get these strange linguistic coincidences, but very often there is relationships, certainly in the Indo-European languages, but when you get into the Semitic languages, I think it's a little more difficult, but it's probably related. So jins is, you basically have, the genus is something that it's covers a lot of different things. So like in tools, if you look at tools as a genus, then you have all these different species under the genus of tools. So if you look at created things, our minds are designed to categorize things, to place them into categories. It's one of the things that the human mind does. It categorizes. And so we put things together. Now, people will categorize things differently, and you can have some differences of opinions about these. But generally, there's a logic to categorization. So he says, اعلم أن الباري تعالى هو الواجب الوجودي الذي لا سبب لوجوده بل هو سبب كل موجود وكل موجود منه وبه تعالى وجوده والموجودات ضربان المعقولات العلوية والمحسوسات السفلية وإيجاده تعالى للمعقولات العلوية قبل إيجاده للمحسوسات السفلية كما روي أن أول ما خلق الله تعالى القلم ثم اللوح وقال أجري بما هو كائن إلى يوم القيامة. So he says, know that the Bari, and Allah, one of the names of Allah is Al-Bari. So he's Al-Khaliq, Al-Bari, and Musawwir. The khalq is the ijad from la shay, comes into. So these are describing different stages of creation, because Allah creates things atwar, in stages. I mean, he says be and it is, but his sunnah is that things are created in stages, like the human janeen, even the human being, the first human being, Adam alayhi salam, and he'll get into that. So, and then the musawwir is the one who actually brings the form of the thing out. So the basic material is created, and then from that material it begins to emerge into different things, and from those different things the speciation happens. So Allah yusawwiruhu. So he's al-Khaliq al-Bari al-Musawwir. And so he says that he's al-Wajib al-Wujud. This term is from Ibn Sina is the first one that uses this term. And the idea behind it, because the dominant theological position of our Ummah is that this is the argument from contingency, that when you look at things, created things, they're contingent. In other words, they're from the realm of possibilities. They don't have to have existed. They exist based on something else. So like we weren't here and now we're here. Before we were here, our parents were here. And then before they were here, our grandparents, and then our great-grandparents. If you go back, some people knew their great-grandparents, but if you get great-great-grandparents, it's very rare that somebody would have ever known their great-great-grandparents. But the basic idea is that we were nothing, and now we're a thing. So what was that contingent upon? What did it rest upon? It rested upon a murajjah that brings us into existence, that decides that we will come into existence. And so the position of the Muslims is that, like the Christians and the Jews, that creation is ex nihilo. It came out of nothing. And for it to come out of nothing means that it's contingent. And so what is wajib al-wujud, because this is mumkin al-wujud, it's contingently existent. It's because it could exist or it could not exist. Both possibilities existed before it came into existence. Just like a unicorn. A unicorn exists in our mind. Nobody's ever seen a unicorn as far as we know, but somebody imagined it. So you can imagine things, but then imagining a horse with a horn is not that far-fetched, because there are many animals that have horns, right? I mean, even a rhinoceros basically has that horn there. So you can imagine a horse with a horn, like a narwhal. It's a whale with a horn. That actually exists. But for a unicorn to come into existence in reality, it would need somebody to bring that, not in the realm of imagination, but in the realm of actualization. So Allah is wajib al-wujud because He's the only existent reality that is not contingent upon something else. So He's necessarily existing. He exists out of necessity. Everything else exists out of contingency. But He exists out of necessity. He's wajib al-wujud. And so He said, because He is the sabab, and we use this majazan, the sabab, He's the sabab of every existent thing, right? Because everything is musabbab. It came in with us, there's some illah behind it, some cause. And not in, we use these terms very carefully in theology because of the problem of calling like God the first cause in the sense of a cause and an effect relationship. So He is sababu kulli mawjudin wa kullu mawjudin faminhu wa bihi, is from Him and by Him. In other words, it emanates from His kun, right? It comes out of Allah's creative power, and it's bihi. It can only be through Him. Right? He's the means by which we come into existence. He is the reality behind our existence. The means is the material that He creates first and then brings us out of that. So then He says, وَالْمَوْجُودَاتِ, there's two types of created things. The مَعْقُلَاتِ الْعُلْوِيَّةِ, the celestial intelligibles. So there are things that are understood, we comprehend them, and they're intelligible. They're immaterial, like angels. Angels are not material. They can take form, but they're not actual material beings. They're immaterial. They're spiritual beings. So substance, when you look at substance, there's material substance and immaterial substance. So they have substance, but it's immaterial. So those are the ma'qalat al-ulwiyya. And then there's the mahsusat as-sufliyya. They're the terrestrial, sensible things that we can actually see and touch and feel. And that's the realm that we exist in down here. But then we go into like the malakut. We have access to dream worlds, true dreams. So we go into other worlds. So we know there's other dimensions that are intelligible, but they're not, we don't experience them by sensoria. We experience them through the medium of our minds. And then he says that وَإِيجَادُهُ تَعَالَى لِلْمَعْقَلَاتِ الْعُلْوِيَّةِ قَبْلَ إِيجَادِهِ لِلْمَحْسُوسَاتِ. So those celestial intelligibles were created before the terrestrial. This is why Imam al-Laqani says, فانظر إلى نفسك ثم انتقل إلى العالم العلوي ثم السفلي تجد به صنعا بديع الحكم ولكن به قامت دليل العدم. وكل ما جاز عليه العدم قطعا عليه يستحيل القدم. So he says in Jawharat al-Tawheed that look into yourself first. That's where you begin. Ibda bi nafsika. And then look into because Ibrahim was told to look into the malakut of the heavens and the earth, that we have access to that through understanding. Think about where things come from, because all of this we see, like you see a tree. Under the tree is all these roots that we don't see. The only time we see the roots is when the tree's uprooted, right? So like the wind comes and it knocks the tree over, and then you see these roots. Or you get a mudslide and then you see this whole root structure. That's the unseen world. So there's a whole source of this world that we're in that comes from the unseen, that we don't see, but it's real. It's called al-ghayb. Even the material scientists know that most of the universe, they actually say around 95% of the universe is dark matter. We don't see it. They know it's there, but we don't see it. So it's just like the light spectrum. Nobody, before we had access to infra and ultra red light, nobody knew that there were other lights. Hummingbirds see colors we don't see. They have actually access to colors that we don't have access to based on their eyes. So even in the physical world, there are things that are unseen that now we can measure because we have material technology that enables us to measure them. We have microscopes, so we see this whole unseen world. That was hidden from us before. Now we see it. So people the ancients understood these things. I mean, dragons, where did dragons come from? It all comes from going deep inside through meditation, through going inside. They saw things. There's sea creatures we don't even know about. There's sea creatures that have never been seen before in the ocean that we don't even know about. I mean, for a long time, they didn't even think the giant squid existed. Then they found the marks of it on whales, because there's a fight between whales and giant squid in the ocean. It's only recently that they thought they were sailors' wives' tales about these giant squid, but these giant squid exist. So just like in the seen world, there's all these unseen things that people thought were wives' tales, and then you find out later that they actually believe in them. That's probably not a politically correct thing to say, wives' tales. Yes. We'll say husbands' tales. Yeah. So then he says, انظر إلى نفسك ثم انتقلي للعالم العلوي. Then go to the celestial realm, and then go to the lower realm, this terrestrial realm. تجد به صنعا بديع الحكم. You will see a creation with wisdom. نسجت بيد حكمت. This is a warp and wove of wisdom by a hand, an all-powerful hand. Nusijat bihikamin, creation. It's been woven with wisdom by the divine weaver's hand. And people, they don't see the patterns because they're not looking. But if you start looking, you'll see the patterns. So then he says that it's ruwiya, and this is sighat tamrid for the students here. When it's put into the mabni al-majhul, generally it means that it has some weakness in it, in the narration. So he's saying that it's been related, that the first thing that Allah created was the pen, al-qalam, thumma al-lawh, and then the lawh, and then the tablet. And Allah said to it, Ajri bima huwa ka'inun ila yawm al-qiyamah. Write what is going to be existent until the end of time. And so that lawh al-mahfuz is the matrix. Everything is written in that lawh al-mahfuz. And one of the things about the modern world, which is very interesting, is that we now have in our hand these telephones that are like a lawh, and there's it's everything in there. It's all mahfuz. It's all mahfuz. You can just click on and look up anything you want, the theory of relativity. Just click it on, they'll explain it to you, E equals mc squared, and then they'll give a whole, you can even read what Einstein said about it. It's all there. You can look up any hadith, maktaba shamila, you can look up any tafsir. It's all there on this lawh. And when Jobs first introduced it, he introduced it with the alwah of Moses. That was on when he first revealed it. He showed the lawh. And so here's the lawh al-mahfuz in our hand, and we don't think Allah has all the information, everything we've ever done. Because that lawh that you have walking around with you can tell you where you were. If it was with you, it'll tell you where you were, what store you went in. Now the police use it to track people if they were there or not. They'll know if you're in an accident, whether you're on your phone or not. So this is all material sciences that has achieved this. And we don't think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't monitor everything. Allah says that the angels are writing everything down. They're recording. I mean, they're literally recording everything. Right? They're recording everything. Fi kitabin marqum, in a digital book. I mean, Allah uses that term marqum. Ruqm is digit. Marqum is digitalized. So it's a book it's a book that everything is written in it. It's a numbered book. And so Allah is showing all this, and 0, 1, on, off. I mean, that's how it's all done with 0, 1. There's only 1 and 0. There's Allah and nothing. Everything else is zero. And so everything's recorded now like this. And so we're in this world where all these signs are so manifest, and yet people are more heedless than ever. The ancients didn't have any of the signs that we have, and they were more aware, more present with God. So then he says, وَرُوِيَ أَنَّهُ قَالَ أَوَّلُ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى الْعَقَلِ. So this is also very weak, but it's related, and some of them they don't, they consider it not, to be. But anyway, it's related, and he's using it. Imam al-Ghazali also, in the end of his Kitab al-Ilm, he has a whole section on the importance of the aql. So the aql is very important. We have aql and naql, reason and revelation. Reason is very important. Without reason, we have no access to revelation. So Allah has given us an aql. We're not mu'tazilite. So the aql is central in our tradition, but the revelation is necessary. The Mu'tazilite actually have a view that the aql can reach truth without revelation. Our tradition says no, there's too many blind spots in the intellect, there's too many, and there's certain things that it could never know, it could never work out except through revelation. But it's important. And so he says that Allah said to the intellect, أَقْبِرْ فَأَقْبَرَ ثُمَّ قَالَ لَهُ أَدْبِرْ فَأَدْبَرَ. So he said, come, and it came, and then he said, go, and it went. And then Allah said in this tradition, وَعِزَّتِي وَجَلَالِي مَا خَلَقْتُ خَلْقًا أَكْرَمَ عَلِيَّ مِنْكَ بِكَ أُؤَاخِذُ وَبِكَ أُعْطِي وَبِكَ أَمْنَعُ وَعَلَيْكَ الثَّوَابِ. So by you I reckon, and by you, so in other words, I punish and I reward, and I withhold or prevent, and upon you is my reward and my punishment. So I take and I give, I withhold, and I give thawab and iqab. وَلَيْسَ الْمُرَادُ بِالْعَقْلِ هَا هُنَا الْعُقُولَ الْبَشَرِيَّةِ. So now he's going to move into a philosophical position, which this is a very debated position amongst the philosophers and things about the aql al-awwal, what they call the aql al-awwal. So, but he's obviously inclines towards this position. So he's بَلَ الْإِشَارَةُ بِهِ إِلَى جَوْهَرٍ شَرِيفٍ. So it's indicating that this is a noble essence, عنه تنبعث العقول البشرية, and from it emanate the human intellects. So there's a view that the aql, this first intellect, is where abstraction comes from. That without it, we would not be able to abstract. So to use a really poor analogy, it's like the hard drive for the software of our individual intelligences. So it's like the cloud. So we're tapping into this, and that's how we're able to abstract and get beyond what the animals are in. The animals are only in perception. They perceive, but we conceive. So we can actually conceptualize. And this is something that differentiates us from other creatures. So يعبر عنه بالعقل الأول. So it's the first intellect. كما في التعبير البعض. So he means the philosophers. وقال قوم العقل ها هنا عبارة عن القلم المذكور في الخبر الآخر. والله أعلم. And some of them said that the intellect here refers to, it's an expression for the aforementioned pen in the previous khabar tradition. Wallahu a'lam. And Allah knows best. So he's saying Allahu a'lam. He's not really taking a position here, but he does indicate that he inclines towards that position of al-aql al-awwal. ثم أوجد الله تعالى السماء والروحانيات. So after that, Allah made the heavens and all of the immaterial substances, the spiritual matters. الذين لا يستكبرون عن عبادتي ولا يستحسرون. Excuse me. So they are neither puffed up with pride from devotion to God, nor do they weary of that devotion. They don't get tired. So these are creatures that are created solely for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't have shahwa, they don't have animality, they have pure spirit, the angelic realm. وإيجاده لهذه الأشياء على سبيل الإبداع. And so his creation of all of these things is by way of ibda', which is unparalleled creativity. In other words, ibda' is is على غير مثال مسبق. There's no previous template. So all of human creativity is from previous templates. Like whenever they do aliens or any of these fantasy things, there's always, why do they have hands and faces and they speak? Because they can only work from pre-existing templates. They cannot conceptualize anything outside of some type of experience they've had. Whereas Allah can do from على غير مثال مسبق. There's no pre-ordained template. There's nothing that Allah is working on. There's no iterative process where, I'll try this or I'll try that. It's ibda'. Badi'u samawati wal ard. So the badi' is the originator of the heavens and the earth without any prior existent thing to suggest to God what he should do, what God should do. So وَإِبْدَعُهُ إِيجَادُ الشَّيْء لَا عَنْ شَيْءٍ مَوْجُودٍ مِنْ قَبْلُ. So ibda' is to create a thing without any prior thing that enables that thing to come into existence. لا عن شيء موجود من قبله. It's not from some pre-existing thing or idea or template. ثم خلق الأركان الأربعة. So this is a pre-modern type of, and I do think it's perfectly valid. It's more poetic than it is scientific, but it's based on experience. So then he says, then he created the 4 elements. So the arkan al-arba'a are the 4 elements. Most pre-modern cosmologies believed in 4 or 5 elements. So for instance, if you go to Ayurveda, if you go to the Hindu tradition, you'll find they have the elements. If you go to the Chinese tradition, they have the 5 elements. If you go to the Greek tradition, they have the 4 elements. So there was this idea of what were the fundamental elements. I mean, now we know with the table of elements that there's over 100 different types of elements. There's a lot of elements, but all of them will go back to these basic things. And so in that way, harakat mutanatti'un, if you just look at it at a basic level, these things are true. So al-harara, so like you can say radium is an element, but it comes out of the element of fire, right? Because it's heat, it's a type of radiation. So And so that's harara, which is heat. Buruda, which is cold. It's the absence of heat, right? Buruda. And then rutuba, which is wet or moist. And then yubusa, which is dry. So these 4 elements, human beings, we have these in our bodies, according to this traditional model. Foods are hot, wet, cold, or dry. So for instance, dates are hot and dry. So if you eat a lot of dates and you're hot and dry, they can actually create disruptions, like you can break out in rashes, things like that. This is all experimental mujarrab, as the Arabs say. Mauritania, they know these things very well, because I was eating a lot of dates when I was there. Maryam kind of felt sorry for me because the food was so limited. People from West Africa know about this. I mean, it's amazing how few things that people live on out in the desert. So she would get the dates out, and I ate a lot of dates, and then I broke out. And then they all said, you're eating too much, it's hot and dry. So they understood that. It's mujarrab. So then these elements were created, and then the jamadat. The jamadat in the peripheries tree, you have the substance, and then the first thing you have, is it material, immaterial, and then is it living or is it non-living? So if it's non-living, it's jamad. These are called jamadat. And then the living is the namiyat. So then is it vegetable or animal, right? So the namiyat are the things that grow, and then the haywanat are the animal things. So these are sentient beings. And then وَخَتَمَ بِصُورَةِ الْإِنسَانِيَةِ. And then he completed creation with this human form. كما أشار إليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So this hadith بقوله, it's in Sahih Muslim. It's actually from Ka'b al-Ahbar. It's one of the gharaib of Sahih Muslim, but it's actually from Ka'b al-Ahbar. And it obviously can't be taken literally, but it's about the creation. It's from the Isra'iliyat, because they have these beliefs also. And the idea that human being was created on Jama'ah in the last of the days. So then he says, وَالْخَلْقُ فِي أَكْثَرَ الْأَحْوَالِ يُقَالُ فِي إِيجَادِ الشَّيْء مِنْ شَيْءٍ قَبْلَهُ. So when we speak about creation, most of the time we will say that a thing comes, we mention the thing that it comes from before it. كَخَلْقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنَ التُّرَابِ. So Allah created the human being from turab, from earth. So the human being is created from earth. And then he says, وَيَقْتَدِي تَرْكِيبًا. And then there's a composite. So we're composite. Unlike Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Western scholastic tradition, they say that God is simple. But that means that غَيْرُ مُرَكَّب. It just means that God is not composite. There's no hypostasis in God, according to the Jews and the Muslims. The Christians have a different view on that. But our tradition is very clear. We are radical monotheists, and that God is one, and that there's no composite nature to God, nor are there more than one God. So God is neither composite in the divine nature. In other words, there's no parts. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So it negates tarkiba and it negates ta'addud. Neither of them. And so then, وَلِذَلِكَ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. From everything we created in pairs. So everything is created in pairs. Even the atom, right? When you get down to that basic fundamental structure, you'll find these pairs, these opposites. Allah has created سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. Glory be to the one who created everything in pairs. These are what now, this term is used a lot, but it's true. They're binaries. Allah has created things. This is a binary world. There's up, there's down. It's all opposites. There's hot, there's cold. There's wet, there's dry. Right? There's intelligence, there's stupidity. Everything is in pairs. Allah has put everything in pairs. Even our bodies are paired. Allah has put us in these pairs. And then He made for us, خَلَقْنَا مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. We made from yourselves mates, pairs, opposites, not the same, opposites. I mean, that's really important. They're opposites. A zawj is opposite. The left and the right foot. They're not the same. They're opposites. They're mirror opposites. In the same way that male and female are mirror opposites. The woman, when she sees the man, she sees her internal reality. When the man looks at the woman, he sees his internal reality. Men are hard on the outside, they're soft on the inside. Women are tough on the inside, but they're soft on the outside. This is the fitrah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why women have immense capacity to bear pain. It's well known, anybody who's worked in medicine knows this. You know, get these old ladies, you do an arterial blood draw on them. I'm fine, go ahead, sweetie. You know, and then you get the big biker, you know, starts crying. I'm not making that up, am I? Dr. Yusuf, have you seen that? Huh? Yeah. So then he says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ مِنَ الْمُبْدَعَاتِ فَتَامٌ. Everything from these mubda'at, from these extraordinary, unprecedented creations are complete. لا نقص فيه بوجه. There's absolutely no deficiency or defect in them. فلو كان فيه نقص لدل ذلك على نقصان مبدعه وصانعه. If there was any defect or deficiency, it would indicate a defect in the mubdi' وصانع, the one who made or created them. فأما المخلوق الذي هو مركب من شيء فقد يحتمل أن يكون فيه نقص ويكون نقصه عارضا من جهة ما ركب منه لا من جهة مركبه وفاعله. So as for the created one who is composite by nature, فقد يحتمل it's possible أن يكون فيه نقص. He can have deficiency. ويكون نقصه عارضا. But that deficiency comes not from the original template, not from the original creation. It comes later. So in other words, like birth defects, all these things that happen, these are from different things that have entered into when people don't. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for them. There's genetic reasons, but they're arid. They're not from the original. They're not from the original, the way Allah created. Allah created everything perfect, but then because sin enters the world, because of and this is not to say, astaghfirullah, that people that have, unfortunately, in some cultures, they actually believe that. There's like a punishment and things like that. There's a lot of reasons. Now there's environmental reasons. You can be exposed to toxins and you get children that are born with birth defects and things like that. So this is all arid. It's not from the original creation. That's his point. So don't think the defects that you see are from God's creation. They're actually secondary effects.